Hey, tonight we walk ancient streets under an orange-pink sunrise, where dusty sandals shuffle past gossiping vendors and stray goats nibble fig leaves. You're in Jerusalem, early in the 1st century, and something feels ... off. You feel it. In the hunch of the old baker's shoulders, the way Roman guards shift too often at their posts, and the murmurs swirling like smoke around one particular named Jesus of Nazareth, a man people either adore, fear, or want gone, revealing the little known. This isn't just about the nails and the cross. It's about pressure building in alleys, behind temple curtains, and deep in the minds of people who think they're keeping control until they are, and single quotes. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Press the notification bell to update many new videos. Let us know your location and the local time you're listening from. We love knowing who's traveling with us. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking shoulder to shoulder with a restless crowd. Donkeys bray. Something's going down at the temple again. But first, let's rewind the morning a little. You're in the thick of the city, ducking past cracked mud brick homes and market stalls thick with spices. The scent of cumin and warm bread competes with the less glamorous temps of goat droppings. It's not glamorous, but Hayenshon urban. Planning wasn't known for its air quality. You pause at a corner where the shouting gets louder. A boy darts by, yelling, "The Galilean, he's back." You squint past the crowd. There he is, Jesus. No halo, no glowing eyes. Just a man in dusty clothes who somehow makes every head turn when he passes. This city is a powder keg, and the fuse is lit. You overhear to old women muttering, "He healed my cousin's leg last month. HMPH, that's what she says." Another man, a fish vendor, scoffs. He's just a troublemaker. Knows the scriptures too well, that one. And here's the twist of tension. Jesus isn't hiding. He walks the streets like he owns the truth. He speaks in parables, little puzzles that make you tilt your head and squint like you're solving riddles in real time. Last week, he told a story about a vineyard owner and corrupt tenants. Some say it was about Rome, others say the temple, priests. Either way, it ticked off all the wrong people. The city smells like metal and sweat pass over his days away. And that means thousands of pilgrims and antsy Roman soldiers patrolling extra hard. Here's your quirky tidbit. Did you know? Some Roman guards used ostrich eggshells as makeshift cups. That means while Jesus was flipping religious paradigms, somewhere nearby a soldier was sipping wine from something that used to be breakfast for a dinosaur. Descendant. Back to your walk. Jesus stops in the square and speaks about forgiveness, even as people whisper that there's a plot to kill him. It's like watching a candle flicker in the wind, refusing to go out. Later that evening, you're seated at a public fountain when you catch a quieter conversation. A pair of priests in robes, one nervously glancing over his shoulder. "He raised Lazarus from the dead," one says, "or so they say," the other hisses. "You think Pilate wants a riot over ghost stories?" "Ah, yes, Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor. He's not exactly loved, not even by the Romans. Historians still argue whether he was a cruel tyrant or just a tired bureaucrat trying to keep a lid on a boiling pot. What's clear is he didn't want trouble yet. Trouble had a talent for finding him. And speaking of historical debates, let's throw one in. Did Jesus really cause such a stir in the temple, or was that moment amplified later? Some scholars Say the temple incident was the final straw, others argue. It was just another spark among many. You're feeling the crowd thicken as whispers spread that something big will happen soon. You're no prophet, but even you can feel it in your bones. There's this weird ache in the city's rhythm, like someone playing a familiar song one note off. You head home past the outer wall, just in time to catch the moon rising a sliver. Sharp as a knife, the air chills. People shutter their windows faster than usual. It's almost like they know what's coming. Somewhere in the darkness, Jesus is preparing for the most important, tanned, brutal week of his life. And you're just a silent witness, brushing shoulders with people who have no idea their choices will be carved into history, sung about in cathedrals, tattooed on arms, and argued over by sleepy internet debaters in their pajamas 2,000 years later. Sleepy or not, the moment is crackling. You're here, right at the edge. Tomorrow will change everything. You wake to the sound of shouting, not angry more, like astonished. You blink against the sunlight streaking through a cracked wooden shutter and lean out. Dust motes dance in the air, and below you, a group gathers in the square, heads craned. Toward the Temple Mount, something is happening, again. By the time you reach the outer courts of the temple, it's chaos. Not the kind with fists and spears. No, this is something stranger. Jesus, the same man you followed yesterday through narrow alleyways, is furious. Not yelling, not cursing, but there's fire in his eyes, and his hands are not idle. He grabs a table, one used by the money changers, then with a sudden crash, flips it over. Coins spill like a stream of silver insects across the stone. Doves burst from their cages with frantic flaps. Merchants stumble back in shock as sheep bleat and bystanders gasp. You flinch. This isn't the soft-eyed shepherd with open arms. This is a man cleansing a sacred space with deliberate violence, not against people, but against corruption. He calls out, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer," but you make it a den of thieves. The words hang in the air, sharp as thrown stones. You can almost hear the scribes and temple guards muttering from the shadows. Their power is being rattled like dice in a rigged game, and they don't like it. One scholar near you whispers, "Blasphemy." Another, quieter, says, "Finally." And just like that, you realize this wasn't a tantrum. This was theater, holy theater. Every table flipped was a message. Every cage thrown open was a sermon. And every silver coin scattered, a mirror to the greed this place had swallowed. You wonder if Jesus rehearsed it, or if it poured out of him like fire from a cracked lantern. Fact check moment, according to the Gospels. This cleansing of the temple happens during Jesus' final week, but historians still argue whether it happened once at the end, or twice, once at the beginning of his ministry and again near the end. Some think the second telling is a literary echo of the first, a way to frame the story. Others insist it's two separate tantrums or revolutions, depending on your point of view. Quirky tidbit for you: the outer court of the temple, where this goes down, was so busy during Passover that some travelers joked it felt more like a livestock auction than a holy site. It even had Roman guards stationed nearby just to prevent stampedes. And yet, no one seems to stop Jesus. He acts like a storm passing through, unstoppable until it's spent. You follow him afterward, as he moves through clusters of stunned pilgrims. A child brings him a broken fig branch. He smiles. That fire in his eyes dims just a little. The intensity doesn't vanish, just turns inward, as if he's counting days in his mind. Later that afternoon, you pass by the home of Caiaphas, the high priest. His house is built like a fortress, stone walls, bronze doors, armed guards. Inside, whispers become plans. They saw it, a voice says. The Romans saw him disrupt the temple. Let them, replies another. We'll say he's inciting rebellion. And just like that, the plot begins to gel, not because Jesus is violent, but because he's effective. No one gets executed for yelling nonsense in the street. They get executed when people listen. You walk past a fig tree and remember a strange thing from earlier, how Jesus approached a tree that bore no fruit and cursed it, not in anger, but as a kind of living parable. By nightfall, the tree withers. Fast-forward thinkers will say he was making a point about the temple's spiritual emptiness, lush in appearance, but fruitless where it matters. You try not to think about how many withered trees you've passed in your life. That night, Jerusalem feels like a wound waiting to split open. The temple is quiet again, but beneath the stone floors, something hums. Jesus returns to Bethany with his disciples. You trail at a respectful distance. The conversation is quiet, thoughtful. One disciple asks, "Why didn't you fight them?" "All," Jesus replies, "because they've already lost." Nobody laughs. The stars above seem colder than usual. You lie down in a dusty corner near the road. From your vantage point, you can see the temple glowing like a crown, and there's a creeping sense that it's already grieving. In another room, behind thick walls, a plan is brewing. The chief priests and elders are debating, but their minds are already made up. Better that one man die for the people, one says, than that the whole nation perish. There's your historical fact. That very line, whether historical or symbolic, echoes Roman logic. Suppress the spark before the fire spreads. But it also stinks of desperation, a system terrified of being undone by a carpenter's son from Nazareth. And Jesus, he's sleeping nearby, calm, as if he already knows what the next act holds. The city breathes like a beast. Tomorrow, there will be a dinner, a kiss, a garden. But for now, the tables are turned, the doves have flown, and somewhere in the dirt are silver coins still catching the moonlight. By the time you wake, the smell of roasting lamb hangs heavy in the air. Passover is close, and everywhere you turn, people are preparing kneading unleavened bread, cleaning, whispering about blood on doorposts and old stories of deliverance. From Egypt, the city is vibrating with history and anxiety. You feel it in your chest, like you're holding your breath and don't know why. Jesus has made preparations for dinner. Not just any dinner, Passover meal with his closest followers. And weirdly, it's held in a borrowed upper room. You don't know who the owner is, only that it's quiet, tucked away from the bustle, with low lanterns that flicker against the stone walls. Like the heartbeat of something ancient, you slip in behind a woven curtain and tuck yourself into a corner no one seems to notice. The room is intimate. 13 men sit on cushions around a low table. There's wine, flatbread, bitter herbs, all traditional, but the air's different. Tighter. Jesus is calm, incredibly calm. You'd think he's hosting a reunion, not a farewell. He picks up the bread, tears it, and says, not joking, "This is my body, broken for you. Take it and eat." Cue every raised eyebrow in the room. Then he takes the cup of wine. "This is my blood poured out for many. Drink this in remembrance of me." You hear a stifled cough. Probably Thomas. The rest stare at him like he's just recited a poem written in reverse. This isn't how Passover goes. You're supposed to talk about lambs and Egypt and angelic death, not your own blood. Here's your historical nugget. Some scholars argue that this moment, the so-called Last Supper, wasn't during Passover at all. Depending on which gospel you read, the timeline shifts. One version has Jesus eating before the Passover meal begins. Another places it squarely on the night itself. Historians still argue whether it was an early Seder, a symbolic echo, or something entirely new. But that's future talk. Right now, the room is spinning. Then Jesus drops the hammer. One of you will betray me tonight. Thud. You hear the collective heart of the room skip. Every man suddenly looks at every other man. Eyes flick, breaths hold. Is it me, Lord? Asks one. Surely not I, says another. The only one not asking is Judas. He's quiet, too quiet. Jesus leans in just enough for those closest to hear. The one who dips his bread with me in the bowl, he's the one. And right then, Judas does it. His fingers brush Jesus. Just for a moment. You want to look away, but you can't. It's electric. It's already over. Jesus says, still calm, what you're about to do quickly. No one stops him as he stands. The cushion rustles. The door creaks open. Judas steps into the night. Quirky aside, some ancient traditions say Judas left to buy more food, a decoy excuse. Others claim he was possessed by a spirit of betrayal, not fully in control. Either way, he walks like a man who's already set fire to something and can't turn around to watch it burn. You glance at the remaining faces, confused, hurt. Peter especially. He's chewing the inside of his cheek like it's got secrets in it. His eyes are locked on Jesus, who somehow isn't shaken. Jesus turns and speaks again. All of you will fall away tonight. Peter slams his palm to the table. Not me, even if they all abandon, why won't? Jesus meets his eyes, gently. Not angry, just sad. Peter, before the rooster crows, you'll deny me 3 times. Boom, silence. You'd swear the oil lamps flicker harder. Historians wonder if that denial was embellished later, symbolic of human weakness. But there's something too human, too believable in Peter's reaction to be fiction. The man means it when he says he'd die for Jesus. He just doesn't know what kind of death is coming. The meal wraps. Songs are sung soft, ancient hymns. Psalms about deliverance. You feel like you're watching the last campfire before a war. Jesus gets up and the others follow. You shuffle behind. The air outside is cooler now. The streets have emptied. No one's yelling about miracles anymore. Just the sound of sandals on stone. As you walk, someone brushes past you, cloaked, hood low. You catch a glimpse of silver at his belt. A pouch, could be coins, could be 30 dot. No one says anything. Jesus leads the group out of the city to a grove of olive trees. You know the name, Gethsemane. It means oil press. Fitting, you think. Something is about to be crushed. But before that crushing, there was bread and wine, and a moment where time split before the betrayal. Before the kiss in a quiet room, a man offered his friends a symbol of love that would echo for millennia, and only one of them didn't finish his meal. The walk to Gethsemane is quiet. Too quiet. You expect whispers, nervous laughter, anything, but the air is so still it hums. The olive grove waits at the edge of the Mount of Olives. Its twisted trunks gnarled like ancient fists, roots coiled tight in the rocky soil. Moonlight threads through the branches in silver streaks. Catching the white dust on your tunic, Jesus stops just past the stone path and turns. Sit here while I go over there and pray. You find a rock to lean against while Peter, James, and John follow him deeper into the grove. The trees are so thick here, it's like stepping into the belly of the earth. You follow quietly, close enough to see but not to disturb, and then Jesus changes, not glowing, not levitating, but unraveling. He stumbles slightly, clutching the side of a tree, and his voice cracks. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow, to the point of death. He falls to his knees, then lower, face to the ground, arms stretched out. He is praying, but not with graceful piety. No, this is guttural, desperate. Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not what I want, but what you want. You feel your throat tighten. You weren't ready to see this side of him, the one afraid, the one pleading. It's like watching a lion limp. Quirky tidbit. Some fringe scholars once claimed that Gethsemane wasn't a grove at all, but a secret underground olive press, the kind that crushes the fruit into oil in slow, grinding turns. Whether true or not, the metaphor hits hard. This moment is a press, squeezing the will of one man until what's left is nothing but obedience. You glance at Peter and the others fast asleep. Jesus returns, finds them snoring softly. He doesn't shout, just shakes his head. Couldn't you keep watch with me for 1 hour? He goes back, prays again, louder this time. Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done. Historians still argue whether this prayer is a window into Jesus' humanity or a theological device. Was he actually afraid? Did he need this moment to steel himself for? Was it included to show his submission? Whatever the intent, the moment feels real, and it hurts to watch. Then it happens. He's sweating, but not normally. The sweat pours down like rain, and in the moonlight it's red. Blood. You blink. That can't be yet. It is. You've heard of it, hematidrosis, a rare condition where intense stress ruptures capillaries and mixes blood with sweat. The body literally breaks down under pressure. Jesus wipes his brow and staggers up, back to the disciples, still asleep. Enough. The hour has come. And then, like they were waiting in the shadows all along a flicker of torchlight, dozens of them, the rustle of armor, boots on gravel. The night breaks open with the sound of soldiers, temple guards, and one man walking ahead of them. Judas, you know what's coming, but you still hold your breath. He walks straight up to Jesus. His voice is calm, almost loving. Rabbi, and he kisses him. The signal, and everything explodes. Guards rush in. Peter leaps up and draws a short sword. Where he got it, you're not sure. He lunges, swinging wildly. There's a yell, a thud, and suddenly a man is screaming, clutching the side of his head. His ear is gone. Just gone. You stare, frozen. Jesus steps forward. Enough, he shouts, not at the soldiers, at his own men. He reaches out, touches the man's head, and just like that the ear is back. Even the guards hesitate. Historical note, all 4 Gospels record this arrest, but only one Joan names the sword swinger, Peter. Another Gospel says the ear's owner's name was Mount. Scholars debate why these details vary, or whether the miracle itself happened. Still, the moment sticks in the memory like a splinter. Jesus turns to the mob. Have you come with swords and clubs, like I'm a criminal? Every day I sat in the temple courts, and you didn't seize me. But this, this is their moment. The shadowy hour, the part where good men turn their faces and darkness gets a pass. They bind him roughly. You wince as they yank his arms and shove him forward. The disciples scatter. Like mice fleeing a lantern, you duck behind a tree, your heart pounding. They're taking him down the hill, toward the city, toward trial, toward whatever comes next. But before he disappears into the dark, Jesus looks back. Not for long, just a glance, and for a second you feel like he sees you. You follow from a distance, sticking to the shadows as they drag Jesus down the slope. The torches bob ahead of you like fireflies, possessed in natural, frantic, casting long, crooked shadows of soldiers and priests across the stone walls. There, not heading straight to Pilate, not yet. First stop, the private residence of Annas, the former high priest, conveniently father-in-law of the current one. Because when you're staging a midnight trial, it helps to keep it in the family. The courtyard is small, ringed with heavy stone and trimmed in creeping ivy. You slip through a narrow alley and climb a low wall, peering over just in time to see them shove Jesus inside. He stumbles slightly on the uneven floor. No one helps him up. Inside, oil lamps flicker low. Annas leans forward from his cushioned seat, eyes sharp. He looks like a man who's already decided the verdict and is just waiting for the formalities to catch up. Tell us about your disciples and your teaching. Jesus stands there, breathing slow. The ropes bite into his wrists. I've spoken openly. Ask those who heard me. A temple guard slaps him. Hard. The sound cracks the air. You flinch. Jesus doesn't. He simply turns and says, "If I said something wrong, testify to what is wrong. But if I spoke the truth, why hit me?" Oof. Even Annas shifts uncomfortably. Historical fact, while Annas no longer held the official title of high priest at this time, he still wielded immense influence. Think of him like the godfather of Jerusalem's religious political scene. Many historians believe he orchestrated much of what came next. Jesus is quickly passed along literally to Caiaphas, the current high priest, whose home is only a courtyard away. Another dark room, another circle of men. You sneak through a crack in the stone and peer in. This trial is even more surreal. They bring in witnesses. Lots of them, but their stories don't match. One man claims Jesus said he'd destroy the temple. Another swears he saw him conjure birds from thin air. Someone else just mumbles something about demons and goats. It's laughably incoherent. No one's laughing. Quirky tidbit. In some fringe texts and folklore, people claim that false witnesses were bribed with cured meats and dates. Highly unlikely, but if true, that would make this one of the most awkward bribe menus in history. Back to Caiaphas, he's had enough. He stands, his robe swishing dramatically like a stage actor, and points a ringed finger. Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? The room stills. Torches crackle. Jesus doesn't dodge, doesn't deflect. He says, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power, coming with the clouds of heaven." It's like he dropped a lit torch into dry straw. Caiaphas tears, his robe a theatrical sign of outrage, and shouts, "Blasphemy! What more do we need?" The others nod eagerly. Some spit. One backhands Jesus. Another blindfolds him, then punches him and says, "Prophesy, who hit you?" You want to look away, but your eyes won't let you. The guards grab Jesus, drag him out, laughing. As they push him down the stone steps, toward the lower courtyard, where he'll be held until sunrise. The sounds of mockery trail behind. And then you hear, "Eater, rooster." You turn, there's Peter. He's in the courtyard too, keeping close to the fire, trying not to be noticed. His hood's pulled low, but it's no use. A servant girl walks up. "You were with him," she says. Peter laughs, too loudly. "I don't know what you're talking about." Another man joins in. "No, I saw you with the Nazarene." Peter, again, "I swear, I don't know the man." Then a third person, "You're Galilean. Your accent gives you away." This time Peter curses. "I do not know this man." And right then, that rooster crows again. Time freezes. Jesus is being led across the courtyard, bruised and bloodied. He turns. Their eyes meet. Peter's mouth opens, but no words come. He stumbles back from the fire, trips over a clay jug, and runs into the dark, a sob catching in his throat. Historians still argue whether this triple denial was a metaphor one. For each failed disciple perhaps saw whether it truly happened, down to the crow. But one thing everyone agrees on: the moment captures Peter at his most human. Loyal, flawed, broken, and ashamed. You slide back down the alley wall, heart pounding. The night is ending. Inside, Jesus waits in silence while the city sleeps. The sun is about to rise on a day unlike any other. The first rays of sun slice through the olive trees like knives. Jerusalem wakes not to birdsong, but to tension. And you're already moving, trailing the guards as they lead Jesus through the city's winding paths. The crowds are starting to stir, women sweeping porches, merchants unshuttering stalls, but most haven't yet heard what happened in the night. You know, you saw it, and now you're seeing what comes next. They're taking him to Pontius Pilate. You've never liked the guy. No one does. The Roman governor has a permanent sneer and the posture of a man who thinks himself too important for his assignment. Judea, to him, is a backwater problem. But troubles landed in his lap this morning, and he's still sipping wine with breakfast. The courtyard outside Pilate's fortress, the Praetorium, fills fast. Not with the usual crowd of petitioners and tax protesters, but with priests and temple elites. They've been up all night, and they want this finished fast, but there's a problem. They don't have the power to execute, so they shift the narrative. When they present Jesus to Pilate, they don't mention blasphemy. Romans couldn't care less about Jewish theology. No, they go full political. He claims to be king, a threat to Caesar. Pilate squints through his morning grog. They push the point. He stirs the people, calls himself the King of the Jews. Pilate motions for Jesus to be brought in. You slip into a shadowed alcove near the gate. You can see everything. Jesus stands before Pilate, blood drying on his face, wrists still bound, tunic stained with last night's dust and spit. Pilate sizes him up. This is not the revolutionary he expected. "Are you the King of the Jews?" Jesus says softly. "You say so." That's it. Pilate frowns. No defense, no panic, just calm. Infuriating, really. He turns to the priests. I find no fault in him. They shout, loud, desperate. They're losing control of the moment. So Pilate, ever the politician, tries to pass the buck. Wait, he's from Galilee. A slow, knowing smile. Send him to Herod. That's Herod's jurisdiction. You groan. Classic bureaucratic dodge. Historical fact. Herod Antipas, the Tetrarch of Galilee, just so happened to be in Jerusalem for the Passover. Lucky coincidence. Or part of the larger cosmic setup. Historians still argue whether this jurisdiction shuffle was political theater or genuine. Protocol. Jesus is dragged across town again. Herod's palace is gaudy excess, draped in silk and bad perfume. You linger near a servant's entrance and peek through a carved lattice. Herod, well-fed and wine-loose, is delighted to see Jesus. "This is the miracle man," he declares. "Show us a sign. Do a trick." Jesus stands silent, not a word. Herod pouts, mocks him, drapes him in a bright robe. A ridiculous color, some say white, others say brilliant red. Royal, but mocking, like dressing a beggar in a crown made of turnips. When Jesus still refuses to perform, Herod yawns and waves him off. Back to Pilate. You're already back at the Praetorium when Jesus is led in again, now humiliated even further. Pilate is clearly annoyed. He's already pacing. The morning's getting longer. He calls Jesus in privately this time. You move closer, ear just inches from the edge of the door. "What have you done?" Pilate asks. Jesus answers quietly, "My kingdom is not of this world." Pilate sighs, "So you are a king. You say that I am." That line again, you wonder if it drives Pilate crazy. It's both answer and evasion. Then comes the most jaded line. You've ever heard Pilate mutter, "What is truth?" You don't know if it's sarcasm, despair, or genuine confusion. Pilate steps out to the crowd. "I find no basis for a charge, but it's Passover. I can release one prisoner. You choose. Jesus or Barabbas." And here it comes. The choice. Barabbas, the rebel, a murderer, a man known for leading violent insurrections. The priests whip the crowd fast. You hear them in the back, seeding the chant, "Barabbas, Barabbas." Then louder, "Barabbas." You want to scream, to yell, to say, "Are you serious?" Pilate raises his hand. "And what should I do with Jesus?" The reply comes like a tidal wave, "Crucify him." Pilate freezes. Why? What crime has he committed? But they're not listening. The chant builds, rhythmic and horrifying. "Crucify, crucify." Pilate looks again at Jesus, still silent, still calm. Then, without looking at the crowd, he asks for water. A servant brings a bronze bowl. You lean in, he washes his hands. "I am innocent of this man's blood." He turns to the priests. "He's yours," quirky tidbit. Some sources say Pilate's wife had a dream that morning about Jesus. She sent a message, warning her husband, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man." But dreams don't stop politics, and Pilate washes his hands, but washing doesn't clean anything. Jesus is handed over. You want to follow, you want to run, you want to understand how a man this calm could just let it happen, and you already know it's just beginning. They waste no time. Jesus is led from the judgment seat straight into the inner courtyard of the garrison, the barracks where Roman soldiers unwind, drink, and, unfortunately, entertain themselves. Today's entertainment, a condemned man who's just been labeled King of the Jews. You slip along a column and peer through a thin wooden grate. It's dark inside, save for a few oil lamps casting a flickering glow on the stone floor. The soldiers surround Jesus in a rough circle. Boots scuff, leather creaks. They begin with the scourging. 2 men step forward with fludgely whips tipped with lead balls and bits of bone. There's no ceremony, no warning. The first strike cracks like a firecracker in a dead field. You don't see Jesus flinch, at least not right away. Again and again. Some fringe historians argue, Whether this beating was intended as a lesser punishment, an attempt to satisfy the crowd's thirst for violence without going full crucifixion, others say it was just Roman protocol, soften the body before execution. You can't tell which theory is right. You only know it's brutal. You grip the grate until your knuckles go white. Then comes the mockery. A soldier disappears into the courtyard garden and returns with something twisted in his hand. A crown of thorns. They press it onto Jesus' head, laughing. Blood dots his brow instantly, trailing down like thin red tears. They drape a purple robe over his shoulders, the fabric torn and dusty. It looks absurd, regal and ruined all at once. One soldier bows low, his voice syrupy with sarcasm. "Hail, King of the Jews." Another slaps him. A third grabs a reed and places it in Jesus' hand like a mock scepter, then immediately snatches it back and beats him with it. You want to scream, but no one else here flinches. Fact, Roman soldiers often mocked condemned men, especially political ones. This wasn't an outlier. It was part of the process. Break the body, break the spirit. And yet, Jesus doesn't yell. He doesn't curse. His eyes scan the room as if he's already somewhere else at some point. Pilate steps back into the scene. He's clearly shaken. The blood, the crown, the robits, all gotten grotesque. You hear him mutter under his breath, "Behold, the man." He turns to the priests waiting outside the gate. He drags Jesus to the edge of the platform. "Look at him," Pilate shouts. "Is this your king?" They don't even blink. "Crucify him," he snaps. "Shall I crucify your king?" One of the high priests steps forward and says, almost proudly, "We have no king but Caesar." And that's it. Pilate's shoulders sag. He gives the nod. Jesus is condemned. You expect immediate execution, but no. The Romans have one final ritual, the march to Golgotha. Jesus is forced to carry his own cross. Now, here's a detail most modern images miss. It wasn't the whole thing, just the horizontal beam, called the patibulum, weighing around 100 pounds. But after a night without sleep, after the flogging, after blood loss, you try carrying anything that heavy. Jesus staggers, slips, collapses. The soldiers yell and kick at him to rise. The crowd gears. Some throw bits of bread. Others spit. You're shoved aside by the flow of people. Vendors, children, elders all pushing to see this strange procession. Death parades are a kind of morbid public theatre in Rome, a lesson. A warning, quirky historical footnote. Crucifixions were often timed with market days, big crowds, maximum exposure. That's right, Rome turned executions into foot traffic. As Jesus stumbles again, a soldier scans the crowd. His eyes land on a man near the Ija, North African traveler. His clothes mark him as an outsider, a pilgrim. You there. The man hesitates. You'll carry the cross. He protests for a second, but there's no saying no to Rome. His name is Simon of Cyrene. You watch as Simon shoulders the beam. His face is strained, not just from the weight, but from confusion, shame. Something else, like he knows this isn't just a moment, it's a story. Simon walks beside Jesus, doesn't speak, just walks, just bears the wood. And now, the city fades behind you. You're climbing a hill, Golgotha, the place of the skull. The crowd gets louder. The sun gets hotter. Dust cakes your throat. This is where Rome makes its point clear. Mess with us, and this is your end. You can smell it before you see it: blood, sweat, and something metallic in the air. Old wood, rotting ropes. Death lingers here like it owns the place. Jesus is nearly there, his knees buckle again, but the soldiers don't pause. They've done this before. They know the rhythm. Simon drops the beam. Jesus falls beside it. They begin to strip him, and the crowd, they cheer, as if this was sport, as if he were already gone. Golgotha looms above you like a broken tooth. Craggy, pale limestone juts out from the hilltop, bleached by sun and sorrow. Locals call it the place of the skull, not because of any bones, though who knows what lies beneath, but because the rock itself is shaped in a way that, from a certain angle, almost resembles a hollow-eyed face. Creepy, poetic, and exactly the kind of place Rome would choose for executions. Visibility, after all, is key. Crucifixion isn't just about death. It's about display. The soldiers get to work with disturbing efficiency. This isn't there. First they've nailed up thieves, rebels, deserters, men who fought Rome, insulted Rome, or simply got in Rome's way. They've seen every kind of scream, every kind of silence. Jesus doesn't resist as they rip the robe from his body. The dried blood on his back tears open again with the fabric. You hear him hiss in pain, but no curse, no struggle. One soldier holds out a cup of wine mixed with myrrh, mild sedative, something to take the edge off. Jesus tastes it and spits it out. You blink. Why would he refuse? Some say he wanted to face what was coming with full clarity. No numbing, no escape. Others argue he rejected it because it came from Rome's hands. Whatever the reason, the cup falls, and he is laid onto the wood. Then the nails, you've never heard a sound like it. The first strike is sharp, echoing across the hill like a cruel drumbeat. The spike drives through wrist, not palm. The Romans knew better. The second follows, then the feet. Fact check. Despite Renaissance art, crucifixion nails went through the wrist area, not the hands. Otherwise, the body would tear free. Romans had refined this method to an exact science of agony. One nail between the radius and ulna, one through the tarsals of both feet. Maximum pain, minimum mercy. The cross is hoisted. You can hear the ropes creak. The beam lurches, then slams into place in a pre-dug hole. The jolt alone must be agony. Jesus hangs there, arms stretched wide, knees slightly bent, body already straining just to breathe. On either side of him, two more crosses rise. Two thieves. One curses non-stop, spitting in every direction. The other is quiet, watching below. The crowd jeers, not shocked, not horrified, amused. Some laugh. He saved, others can't save himself. Others shake their heads. If he's the Son of God, let him come down. And standing among them, the same priests who chanted for his death. Still watching, still waiting, you notice a wooden placard nailed just above his head. Written in Latin, Greek, and Aramaic, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. It's Pilate's doing, a final jab at the priests who pressured him into this. They had asked him to change it, say he claimed to be king. Pilate shrugged. What I have written, I have written. Quirky tidbit. Some early Christian stories claim that the letters inscribed INRI in Latin sparked confusion and mockery for years. One Roman joked it stood for "I'm not really important." Another claimed it was secretly a code. Spoiler: it wasn't. It was just bureaucracy at its most sarcastic. Back on the hill, something strange happens. The thief on the left is still shouting, sneering through pain. If you're the Messiah, save yourself. And us, while you're at it. But the one on the right shifts. His voice is hoarse, but clear. Don't you fear God. We're getting what we deserve. But this man, he's done nothing wrong. He looks over at Jesus and says simply, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. It's quiet. Wind brushes through the scrubby grass. Jesus turns, eyes heavy but alive. Truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. You feel something in your chest twist. He's dying and still comforting someone else. Historians debate whether this moment actually happened. Only one gospel records it. Some say it's symbolic, a theological insert to reinforce the idea of last minor redemption. Others argue the detail is too specific not to be based in truth. After all, who would invent compassion in such a moment? Below the cross, the soldiers gamble for Jesus' clothing. Literally, dice clink against stone. One shrugs, decent weave. You think that robe was hand-woven, seamless, probably made by someone who loved him. Maybe even his mother. You glance through the crowd. She's here, Mary. She doesn't cry like you expect. She doesn't scream. She just stands. Beside her, other women, and one young man. You recognize him. John, the only disciple who didn't. Run. Jesus looks down, voice barely audible. Woman, here is your son. Then to John, here is your mother. Even now, he's connecting people. You suddenly realize you're holding your breath. The sun's climbing, but the warmth feels fake. Jesus hangs there still, watching, waiting, and somewhere deep inside, something shifts. You no longer feel like a spectator. You feel ... seen. It's just past noon, and the sky turns wrong. Not grey, not cloudy, but dark, like a storm, but with no wind, no thunder, just darkness that shouldn't be there. Black swallowing blue in the middle of the day. People look up, murmurs ripple through the crowd. A few laugh nervously, calling it an eclipse. But their voices falter. There's no chill in the air, no shadow movement, no logic to it. Just the sun ... gone. You tighten your cloak. It feels like night. You don't know how, but it does. And still, Jesus hangs there. His breathing is ragged now, each inhale shallow and hard won, pushing up on nailed feet to expand the lungs, sagging again under his own weight, over and over. Every breath is a battle. You glance around. Even the soldiers are unsettled. One whispers to another. A few shift their stances. Rome is used to violence, not omens. You step forward, closer to the base of the cross. It feels wrong to watch from the shadows anymore. Jesus lifts his head, barely, and says something in Aramaic. It's rough, guttural. You can just make it out. Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? The words cut deeper than any nail. They're from Psalm 22, a prayer older than the stones under your feet. But to hear him say them like that, a man once surrounded by crowds, by friends, by followers, ... now hanging between criminals, feeling abandoned by God himself. Historians still argue whether this cry was despair or devotion. Some say Jesus was quoting the psalm to fulfill prophecy. Others think it was a cry of spiritual fracture, the moment when the divine withdrew. Or perhaps he was simply showing the full range of human suffering, no filter, no edit below the cross. Someone thinks he's calling Elijah. A man grabs a sponge, soaks it in sour wine, and lifts it on a stick of hyssop. toward Jesus' lips. You catch the scent vinegar, sharp and acrid. Jesus tastes it but says nothing. That's your quirky tidbit for this section. Sour wine, or posca, was the common drink of Roman soldiers. A cheap mixture of water and vinegar. Hydrating, sort of. Disgusting, definitely. Offering it here wasn't mercy. It was mockery dressed as tradition. Jesus' head dips. His eyes scan the crowd one last time. Then suddenly, clearly he speaks again. It is finished. You freeze. What does that mean? His life, his suffering, the plan, all of it. And then, with one final breath that sounds more like a whisper torn in half, he says, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." A&D, he's gone. Just like that. No dramatic music. No divine spotlight. Just ... silence. And the ground moves. At first you think it's your knees buckling. But no, it's the earth itself. The hill shudders. Stones shift. There's a low groan beneath your feet, like the world exhaling after, holding something in for too long. Somewhere in the city, someone screams. The veil in the temple, that heavy curtain that separates the holy place from the most holy, is torn top to bottom, not from human hands. From above, the ground stops shaking. But your hands don't near you. A Roman centurion drops to one knee. He's not mocking anymore. He looks at Jesus now, still, lifeless, and says, "Surely this was the Son of God." Just like that. No flair, no religion. Just truth, raw and sudden. That's your historical fact here. Some Roman centurions were known to develop grudging respect for the condemned. But this wasn't respect. This was revelation. The crowd begins to thin. Some stumble away, dazed. Others cry openly. A few still mock old habits die hard. But even they seem shaken. You don't move. You look up at him, what's left of him. The blood, the bruises, the body still suspended. But something else lingers. Peace. No. Something heavier, like the moment. After lightning strikes, when the world is too quiet and too changed, you look to Mary, still standing. She hasn't moved. Neither has John. Someone weeps nearby. Maybe them. Maybe you. Time blurs. Eventually, two men arrive. They speak with the soldiers, offering something you didn't expect. A tomb. Not just any tomb. Rich man's burial space. Freshly carved. Never used. His name is Joseph of Arimathea. You'll hear more about him soon. But for now, you just watch. The soldiers bring a ladder. They begin removing the nails. And Jesus, he doesn't resist. Not anymore. The sun is back now, but no one seems to notice. It doesn't shine, it glares, harsh and indifferent. The light feels offensive, like it shouldn't be allowed to return just yet. Not after that. The crowd has thinned to only a few dozen now. You stay back as the soldiers lower Jesus' body from the cross, careful not out of compassion, but because the job is nearly over, and botching a corpse earns more paperwork than it's worth. Joseph of Arimathea steps forward. He's but dusty, not the kind of man you'd expect here. A member of the council, you learn, but a quiet follower of Jesus, too, one of those believers who never spoke too loud when the crowd was hostile. He's not alone. Another man helps him, a figure you recognize, but can barely believe is here. Nicodemus, yes, that Nicodemus, the one who visited Jesus by night. The one who asked how someone could be born again. He's carrying a bundle, myrrh, an aloes about 75 pounds worth. More than enough for royalty. Historical fact. Jewish burial customs involved wrapping the body in linen strips with spices layered between the folds. It slowed decomposition, masked odor, and honored the dead. But this much myrrh, this is beyond tradition. This is devotion in the form of extravagance. The two men gently place Jesus on a linen sheet. They work quickly, the Sabbath is only hours away, and by Jewish law, no work can be done once it begins. That includes burial. You watch as they clean. The blood from his face, smooth his tangled hair. Wash the dirt and spittle from his skin. There's no glamour in it, only tenderness. They wrap him limbs first, torso, then finally the head. Each layer of linen is soaked with fragrance. The scent hits you, rich, spicy, almost sweet, overwhelming. They lift the body and carry it to a small garden just beyond the hill. You follow silently, heart pounding for reasons you can't name. There it is, the tomb, carved into limestone, new, untouched. Inside, the air is cool and damp. You feel like you've entered the mouth of the earth itself. They lay the body on a shelf carved into the stone wall, and then the stone, it takes 3 men to roll it across the entrance. A thick disc of rock grooved into a shallow trench, meant to be moved once and left forever. The sound of it sliding shut is low and final. A punctuation mark at the end of everything. You stand there long after the others have gone. The silence is so complete it has weight. And then come the priests again. They've already thought ahead. If his disciples steal the body, they tell Pilate, they'll claim he rose from the dead. Better secure the tomb. Pilate sighs, like a man who regrets ever getting out of bed this week. You have your guard, he says. Make it as secure as you know how. And so, that afternoon, a Roman guard is posted at the tomb. Not just one man, multiple, with swords, with orders, with sealed wax pressed into the rock to prove no one's tampered with it. Quirky detail, Roman seals weren't just symbolic. Breaking one was a capital offense. Touching the tomb without authorization could get you crucified yourself. Rome didn't mess around with grave robbers, revolution rumors. You sit in the olive trees across from the tomb, watching the soldiers set up camp. They aren't laughing like before. They're wary, superstitious, maybe. One of them lights a torch before sundown, muttering that this whole place feels cursed. Night falls, and with it, the Sabbath Jerusalem goes quiet. Not peaceful dash, just ... Muted, like everyone is waiting for something, but no one knows what. Inside the sealed tomb, the spices cling to the wrapped body. The linen is still no breath, no heartbeat, no movement, you. Think of all the people scattered across the city, Peter, hiding in shame. Mary, grieving in silence. The other disciples, lost in a maze of fear. Judas, well, no one's sure where he went. You heard whispers, but you don't want to believe them. Historians debate what happened in those next hours. Some suggest the disciples already began planning their next moves. Others say they were completely paralyzed. But one thing's clear. Nobody expected a comeback. Nobody sat outside the tomb with snacks and a countdown clock. Nobody stayed up singing hymns waiting for a miracle. Nobody thought Sunday would change anything. But you can't shake the feeling. Something's coming. You don't know what, but the darkness doesn't feel final. It feels like a held breath. The second night passes with no dreams. You wake before dawn, limbs stiff from sleeping under olive trees. The stone beneath you is cold, and a mist clings low over the ground, curling like breath from sleeping giants. The tomb is still there. Of course, just as sealed, just as guarded. But something's off. The guards are alert. Too alert. Swords unsheathed. Whispering, one keeps glancing at the horizon like he expects it to explode. Another clutches a torch he hasn't lit, chewing his bottom lip raw. You inch closer, hidden behind brush. Then before your eyes can fully adjust to the dim pre-dawn light, it happens. Not a sound, not a spark, but the earth moves. No one speaks, no one shouts. It just shakes along, low, tremble, as though the ground is holding something in and has finally decided not to. One of the soldiers drops to his knees. Another tries to stand, then collapses against the tomb wall. The air is thick charged. And then you see it. The stone, it's moving. Not rolled by human hands. Not pried open. Pushed from inside. The wax seal splits. The boulder gives way with a slow, aching scrape, and sunlight slices through the mist and falls directly into the tomb's gaping mouth. The guards, gone. They run like children, dropping spears, screaming. You hear one yell about a being in white. Another just sobs. It was glowing, glowing. You blinked on, and then they're gone, and the tomb, empty. You step closer, slowly. The morning is rising fast now, gold washing over the garden. You peek inside, heart slamming in your chest. The linens are still there, but they're not scattered, they're folded. One piece lays neatly where the body should be. Another, the cloth that covered his head, rests carefully off to the side. Moment, the Gospel of John specifically mentions this folded burial cloth. Scholars debate why. Was it a signal, a symbol, a literary detail to emphasize the calm, deliberate nature of what happened? Nobody folds laundry in a grave robbery. That's the point. You take a shaky step back, and then footsteps. Not soldiers, women, Mary Magdalene. Another, Mary, Salome, more behind them, carrying spices. You realize they came to anoint the body, to finish the burial properly, respectfully. They don't know what's happened yet. They pause as they reach the tomb. Their faces twist in. Confusion, then fear. One of them cries out, and then someone else speaks. You whip around. They're standing near the rock knot, glowing, not winged, not floating, but impossibly serene, is a man in white. Why do you seek the living among the dead? He asks gently. The women freeze. He smiles. He is not here. He is risen. The words hang in the air like a song sung backwards, like a riddle you've heard your whole life, but only now understand. Mary Magdalene takes a step forward. Where is he? Her voice is cracking. The man in white gestures toward Galilee. He's going ahead of you. You'll see him there. And just like that, he's gone. No poof. No special effects, just gone. The women look at one another, then back at the tomb, then at the road. For a moment, they're frozen in holy terror. Then they run, not away, to tell the others. Historical footnote. The Gospels record women as the first witnesses of the resurrection. This is significant not just theologically, but culturally. In ancient courts, a woman's testimony held little legal weight. If this story were fabricated, it likely wouldn't have women at its center. Scholars on all sides agree. This detail rings of truth. You sit on a low stone bench as the garden slowly brightens. It should feel peaceful. It doesn't. It feels like the world has been rewired. The kind of silence that follows an avalanche. Everything looks the same, but nothing is you half expect. Jesus to walk out and nod to you. He dawns not yet, but the women are already halfway down the road, and the guards, there at the high priest's gate, breathless, trying to explain the unexplainable. You slip into the city just as word starts to spread. The tomb is empty. Whispers creep into corners, behind shutters, across temple steps. Some say the disciples stole the body. Others claim it was all a trick. A few look skyward and say, "Nothing, but you know. You saw the stone, you saw the cloth, and you can still feel the tremble under your feet." The city is stirring, but not in the usual way. It isn't the clang of mourning pots or the shout of merchants. It's quiet urgency. Streets are walked a little faster. Doors close a little quicker. There's a rumor rolling through Jerusalem, like a dust storm, and everyone's scrambling to figure out if it's real or just another ghost story. You pass to priests arguing in hushed tones behind a fig vendor's stall. One says, "The guards ran," said the stone rolled itself. The other hisses, "Then it's a theft. We'll say the disciples took it." No one believes dead men walk, except some do. You slip past the temple steps and turn down a narrow alley that empties into a small courtyard. There, sitting cross-legged and staring at nothing, is Peter. He looks like a man who's aged 20 years in 2 days, beard untrimmed, eyes swollen from lack of sleep, poor, too much weeping. You hear footsteps behind you. Mary Magdalene bursts into the courtyard. Breathless, they've taken him. She shouts, "The tomb's empty." Peter and another disciple, young quick-footed John, jump to their feet. No words, just motion. You follow. They run through the winding streets, dodging carts, slipping past travelers just arriving for the last day of Passover. John outruns Peter, reaching the tomb first, but he hesitates at the entrance. Peter doesn't. He barrels straight in. Then comes the stillness. They emerge together, stunned. John speaks first. The linens, they were folded. Peter shakes his head, as if trying to knock sense back into it. They didn't take him. They couldn't have taken him. You'd expect relief, joy, but there's only confusion. Even now, they don't believe resurrection. They only know something happened. Something impossible. John leaves first, heading back into the city. Peter lingers. He doesn't cry, he doesn't talk. He just sits at the mouth of the tomb with clenched fists, his lips twitching like he's trying to form a prayer but can't find the words. Eventually, he leaves too, but Mary stays alone. She kneels at the entrance, weeping softly, then harder. Then with a depth that sounds ancient. She's lost him twice now. First to death, then to ... What? Theft, trickery, God. And then she looks inside. 2 figures in white sit where the body had lain, one at the head, one at the feet. They ask, gently, "Woman, why are you weeping?" "They've taken my Lord," she says, choking the words out. "And I don't know where they put him." She turns and sees a man. She doesn't recognize him, not at first. The light is strange. The tears blur her vision. Maybe he's the gardener. "Sir," she says, her voice trembling, "if you've taken him, tell me where you laid him and I'll go get him." Then the man speaks. Just one word, "Mary." She stops, breath caught, eyes wide, and the recognition crashes into her like thunder on a still lake. "Rabboni," she gasps, "teacher." She rushes toward him, arms open, but he holds up a hand. "Don't hold on to me yet," he says. "I've not yet ascended, but go, tell the others, tell them I'm returning to my Father and your Father." She nods, eyes locked on him like she's afraid he'll disappear again. If she blinks, and then he's gone, just ... gone, not vanished. not teleported, just no longer there. Historical debate. Some scholars suggest Mary's encounter was a vision, symbolic or spiritual. Others believe it was bodily, literal. There's even chatter about whether the earliest manuscripts of the Gospel of Mark originally ended with no appearances only, the empty tomb and trembling fear. But this story, Mary's story, has endured, vivid and personal. You trail Mary as she runs back to the disciples. You've never seen joy and disbelief battle so fiercely on one face. She bursts into the upper room where the disciples have gathered and blurts it out, "I have seen the Lord." And they don't know whether to believe her. You can't blame them. The idea is to big dot, to wild dot. But the ripple has started. Jesus is alive. Not a rumor, not a metaphor. Alive, and somewhere out there, walking, breathing, watching is the man they buried. And he's not done yet. Night again. But no one sleeps. The upper room is thick with silence. No one eats. No one speaks above a whisper. The lamps burn low, their oil running thin, casting long, restless shadows across the walls. You sit near the window, watching the street below for any sign of Roman patrols or something else. The door stays bolted. Then someone says it. Finally, if he's really alive. Where is he? No one answers. And yet, every eye in the room is asking the same question. Then suddenly, he's there, no knock, no sound of the latch. Just dash there, Jesus, standing in the middle of the room. Same body, same face, only different, calmer. Like the storm has passed through him and left him not broken, but changed. You blink, Peter gasps, someone knocks over a cup, and then Jesus speaks, "Peace be with you." It lands in the room like soft rain on dry ground. The disciples freeze, unsure if they're seeing a ghost. This isn't a dream. There's weight to him, movement, breath. He lifts his hands. You see them clearly now, the wounds deep red, not bleeding, but unmistakably real. Then his side, the place where the spear tore him open. No one speaks until Thomas mutters, "It can't be," but Jesus smiles. He doesn't rebuke them. He breathes again. Peace. Fact check time. Nearly all gospel accounts agree Jesus appeared to his followers after the resurrection, not as a spirit, but embodied, eating, speaking, letting them touch him. Historians wrestle with the nature of these appearances. Were they hallucinations, mass grief responses, a real physical resurrection? No one can explain the consistency or the sudden courage the disciples gain afterward. As if reading the room, Jesus says, "Look, touch me." A ghost doesn't have flesh and bone like I do. Peter steps forward, hands shaking, and reaches out. His fingers touch the wound in Jesus' hand, and he stumbles backward, whispering, "It's you." And Jesus laughs. Not loud but warm. Familiar. He sits, just like that, on the floor, cross-legged, like before. Then he says, "You have anything to eat?" Everyone blinks. Bartholomew scrambles for a plate of grilled fish cold, left over from earlier. Jesus takes it, chews, swallows, not as a performance, just hunger. Quirky tidbit. Ancient Jewish ghost stories often included one test: if the spirit eats, it's not a spirit. Food was proof of life. Jesus knew this. He wasn't just filling his stomach. He was answering a fear. Thomas still hangs back. He hasn't moved. His arms crossed, face blank. Jesus turns to him. "You don't believe." Thomas straightens. "I don't know what I believe." Jesus stands, walks to him, gently takes his hand and places it against his own side. Don't be faithless. Jesus says, believe, and Thomas breaks. Tears fall. He drops to his knees and whispers, my Lord and my God. Jesus smiles. You believe because you've seen. Blessed are those who haven't seen and still believe. The room is silent again, but now it's not empty. It's full with hope, with questions, with something no one can quite name yet. The disciples cluster close, asking him everything: where he went, what happens next, what they should do. But Jesus doesn't answer every question. Instead, he says something strange. As the Father sent me, I'm sending you. And then he breathes on them, a long, slow exhale. Receive the Holy Spirit, he says. You don't know what that means yet, but something inside you shifts, like your lungs remembered something they were built to carry. You lean against the wall as he disappears again. Not with lightning or flames, he simply steps out the door and vanishes into the darkness. And the disciples, they're no longer hiding. You can feel it. Something new has been born in them and outside. Jerusalem still sleeps, unaware, but not for long. Jerusalem wakes again, same dust, same birds, same markets opening with squeaky hinges, but everything's different now, and no one knows it yet. Well, almost no one. You trail behind two men as they leave the city gates, robes tugged tight against the breeze. One walks fast and frustrated, kicking stones. The other just follows. These are disciples, but not the ones you've seen before. These two are headed toward Emmaus, a small village about 7 miles away, and they are talking loudly. He was supposed to save us, says the first Cleopas, and now he's gone, crucified like a thief, buried, and now what? Rumors. The second man doesn't reply. They keep walking, and that's when a stranger joins them. Just appears, like a traveler catching up on the road. Ordinary, cloaked, hooded, nothing glowing or grand. Just ... There, what are you talking about? The man asks, voice gentle. They stop. Cleopas gives a laugh that's more bitterness than humor. Are you the only one in Jerusalem who hasn't heard what happened? The man tilts his head. What happened? So they tell him about Jesus of Nazareth, the miracles, the crucifixion, the tomb, and the strange report from the women that morning. And the men sound so sure it's over, so exhausted by disappointment, they don't even question why this stranger walks beside them with such calm. Then the man speaks. Wasn't it necessary? He asks. Didn't the prophets say the Messiah had to suffer before entering glory? And then he starts explaining, not in vague hints, in scripture, from Moses through the prophets, all of it, threading it together like a tapestry they've never seen before. Each verse, each story, clicking into place like pebbles arranged, to show a path they've walked blindly their whole lives, and still they don't see him. Here's your quirky, historical tidbit. Emmaus's exact location is debated. Several sites claim to be the real village, ranging from 7 to 20 miles from Jerusalem. Some say the place was metaphorical, a stand-in for any road where hearts are broken and remade. Historians argue, of course, but you just keep walking. Behind them, heart pounding, the sun begins to dip when they finally reach the village. Stay with us, Cleopas says to the stranger. It's almost evening. The man nods. They sit down to eat. A loaf of bread is placed before them. The man takes it, blesses it, breaks it, gives it, and in that precise moment, their eyes fly open. It's him, Jesus, not disguised, not revealed, just recognized, and, before they can move, he vanishes. Gone, not dramatically, just gone, like a candle snuffed by breath. They sit in stunned silence. Then Cleopas grabs the other man by the shoulders and shakes him. Weren't our hearts burning when he spoke to us on the road? They don't wait. They run back to Jerusalem. 7 miles in the dark. No fear of robbers. No fear of fatigue. Only fire. They burst into the upper room, panting, dust-covered. He's alive. Cleopas yells, and before they can even finish, the story Jesus appears. Again, right in the middle of the room. Same smile, same hands, same peace. Fact check. This appearance to the disciples in the upper room is recorded in multiple Gospels. Some say Jesus passed through locked doors, suggesting a transformed body. Others emphasize his eating, touching, physicality, highlighting that this is not a ghost story. Scholars still wrestle with how these two truths coexist. But tonight, Jesus has something more to say. He opens their minds. That's the phrase Luke uses. Not he taught. He opened their minds. Suddenly, they understand, not just that he's alive, but why he died, what it means, who they now are. He tells them, you are witnesses to these things. And they believe him, every word. Because you can't unsee someone who is dead. Now eating fish, the room is quiet again. But this time, it's expectant. Not fear mission, because resurrection isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of 1,000 new ones, and Jesus, he's not staying much longer. The air's warmer now. Days have passed. Maybe more, you've lost count. Time doesn't feel linear anymore. It stretches and curves around moments that feel both ancient and brand new. Jesus doesn't live with the disciples now, but he appears. Comes and goes like wind slipping through cracks in the walls. One minute he's there, the next you're looking at a space where he just stood, wondering if you imagined it. But this time is different. You're by the Sea of Galilee, early morning, where the mist hovers just above the water and the air smells like salt and wet wood. The disciples are here, too: Peter, Thomas, Nathanael, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others back in familiar territory. They've gone fishing. Old habits. You sit on the shore, watching their small boat rock gently with the waves all night. They've cast nets and pulled up nothing, not a single fish, just water, cold, blank water. Then morning breaks. Someone stands on the shore. They don't recognize him, he's far off, just a silhouette in the sunrise. Then he calls out, "Friends, have you caught anything?" Peter shouts back, "Nothing." The man gestures, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat. You'll find some." They roll their eyes, but they do it, and instantly dash chaos. The net strains, jerks, fills. It's alive with flapping, silvery movement. They shout to one another, pulling, laughing in shock. Someone mutters, "It's just like before." And then John squints toward the shore. "It's the Lord," he says. Peter doesn't hesitate. He grabs his cloak, leaps into the sea, and swims. Not walks, not waits. Swims. You run to meet him as he stumbles ashore, drenched and gasping. The others bring the boat in slowly, the net dragging behind like a trophy on the beach. A fire is already burning. There's fish roasting on the coals, and bread. Jesus smiles. "Bring some of the fish you caught." Historical fact: in ancient Roman-occupied Judea, fish was the most common protein for the poor. Grilled fish and bread, ordinary food. Not holy, not symbolic. Just breakfast. but coming from someone who just defeated death, it tastes like grace. They sit. No one dares ask who he is. They know he breaks the bread, passes the fish. No sermon, just eating. Quirky tidbit. In early Christian communities, the fish symbolictus became a secret code. Scratch one arc in the sand, wait for the other person to complete it. A quiet way to say, I believe too, this breakfast by the sea. Probably why the symbol stuck. After the meal, Jesus pulls Peter aside. You follow at a distance, the sand cool, beneath your feet. They walk in silence for a bit. Then Jesus says, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Peter freezes, looks down. Yes, Lord, you know I love you. Jesus nods, feed my lambs. A few more steps, again double quotes. Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter swallows. Yes, Lord, you know I do. Take care of my sheep. And then, third time, Simon, do you love me? Peter's voice cracks. Lord, you know everything. You know I love you. Jesus places a hand on his shoulder. Feed my sheep. 3 denials, 3 declarations, 3 chances to come home. Fact check. Scholars see this moment as Peter's restoration. The man who once denied now becomes the man entrusted with everything. And in typical Jesus fashion, the healing comes. Not with thunder, but with breakfast, with questions, with grace disguised as repetition. Peter stares at the sea. Jesus continues, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you're old, someone else will dress you and lead you where you don't want to go. Peter doesn't flinch. He just nods, and Jesus says, follow me. You look out over the water. It ripples softly. No lightning, no booming voice from heaven, just a shoreline, a fire, a promise, and a man who walked out of a tomb asking his friends if they'd like some fish. The days that follow are quieter, but not still. Jesus appears, disappears, then appears again, never quite where or when you expect. He shows up in the middle of rooms without opening doors, then walks with travelers for miles like any ordinary man. The disciples stop being surprised, not because it's normal, but because it's him. And with Jesus, the line between strange and sacred has always been thin. You find yourself back in Jerusalem, sitting on the steps of the temple, watching the crowds. It's festival season, and the city's energy is finally returning to something like normal. But in the upper room where the disciples gather, nothing feels ordinary. They're waiting, not hiding anymore. Waiting because Jesus told them to. You glance around the room. There's Mary Magdalene, Mary, his mother, the other women who followed him, the 11. Even Thomas now, who hasn't left Jesus' side since he touched those wounds. There, together, but there's tension in the air. Not fear, anticipation, like they're on the edge of something. Then Jesus appears again. No warning, no sound, just presence. He stands in the center of the room, and you realize something's changed. He's brighter, not glowing, but unmistakably alive, in a way that seems to bend the rules of being human. He raises his hands and says once more, peace be with you. This time, no one doubts it. He sits. They gather close, and Jesus begins to teach again, not in parables now, not in riddles. He opens the scriptures like a map, pointing to all the places that hinted at him, all the shadows that suddenly make sense in the light of what's happened. You learn more in those few minutes than most people learn in a lifetime. He speaks of the kingdom of God, not as a far-off dream, but as something present, something growing, not a kingdom of swords or thrones, but of justice, of mercy, of hearts changed from the inside out. And then his voice shifts, more serious. You are witnesses of these things. He looks around the room, and I am sending you what my Father promised. The disciples glance at each other. He continues, but stay in the city until you are clothed with power from on high. You don't know what that means yet, but the weight of it lands. They do. 2. Then Jesus rises. Come, he says. So they do. They follow him through the city, past the temple, through the Kidron Valley, all the way to Bethany, where olive trees lean and sway like old listeners eavesdropping on sacred conversations. You stand on the hilltop with them. The breeze picks up. Jesus turns, faces them one last time. His eyes sweep over each face. Peter, John, Mary, James, Thomas, all of them. And then he lifts his hands to bless them. And while he's doing it, he begins to rise. Not levitating in a slow, awkward way. Not pulled by strings. He simply moves upward, like gravity no longer applies. The disciples don't speak. They just watch. And Jesus rises, higher and higher, until a cloud covers him, and he's gone from sight. Just like that. Gone again. Quirky. Historical tidbit. The Ascension, as it came to be known, is one of the earliest affirmations of the Church. Not just that Jesus rose from the dead, but that he departed intentionally with purpose, leaving his followers not abandoned, but commissioned. Everyone is still staring at the sky when 2 men robed in white appear beside them. They say, "Men of Galilee, why do you stand here looking into the sky? This same Jesus, who has been taken from you into heaven, will come back in the same way." Then they're gone too. Just a few breaths in and out, and everything is changed. The disciples slowly turn, faces still tilted upward. No one cries, no one panics. They rejoice. Strange reaction, right? But somehow it makes sense, because now they know the tomb is empty, death is defeated, and the kingdom, it's already starting. Back in Jerusalem, the city hasn't changed, but you have. The same temple still rises above the stone skyline. The same Roman banners flap in the wind. The same streets are packed with vendors arguing over figs and coins. But now, when you walk through the city, you carry a secret, a truth, a name that doesn't stay quiet in your chest. Jesus, the one who died, the one who walked again, and the one who left, not to escape, but to send. You find the disciples gathered again in the upper room. The mood is unlike anything you've seen before. Not the hushed fear from that first weekend, not the confusion from Emmaus. This is focus, purpose. Peter is talking loudly as usual. He stands with his back straight, hands gesturing as he speaks. "We have to replace Judas," he says. "It was written, 12 started this. 12 will carry it forward." They vote. A man named Matthias is chosen. Quiet, humble, faithful, and just like that. The circle is whole again. But they're not ready yet. Not fully. Jesus had told them. Wait. So they wait. 10 days pass. And then Pentecost. The streets are crowded again, pilgrims from every direction. Parthians, Medes, Elamites, Egyptians, Libyans, Romans, all packed in the city to celebrate the giving of the law at Sinai. Just like every year, but this year something else is about to be given. You're back in the room with the disciples. It's early, lamps flicker, windows cracked for air. The morning light is just beginning to seep in. Then it happens. A sound, like a wind, but more. Not air moving, but something rushing. It roars through the room without moving a single curtain. Then dash, fire, not burning, not consuming, just resting above each head. A tongue of flame flickers and dances. No one panics, because it's not destruction, it's presence. And suddenly, their mouths open and they speak. Not in Aramaic, not in Hebrew, but in languages they've never learned. Egyptian, Persian, Latin, fluently, clearly, joyfully, fact check. Pentecost was one of the 3 pilgrimage festivals, so Jerusalem would have been bursting with visitors from around the ancient world. The story of Acts describes how each listener heard the disciples declaring the wonders of God in their own native tongue. Scholars debate whether this was a miracle of speaking or a miracle of hearing. Either way, it blew the crowds' minds. Outside, the noise draws people in. You follow them, hundreds crowding the narrow street, craning necks, pointing fingers, whispering questions. Are these men drunk? But Peter steps forward, bold and alive. He raises his voice. These people aren't drunk, it's too early. What you're hearing was spoken by the prophet Joel. In the last days, God will pour out his Spirit on all people. And then, he does what only a transformed man can do. He tells the story. Jesus, the miracles, the cross, the resurrection, and not with timid apologies or vague suggestions, he proclaims it. God has made this Jesus, whom you crucified, both Lord and Messiah. The crowd goes still, and then something unexpected happens. They aren't angry, they're cut brothers. Someone cries out, "What should we do?" Peter answers without blinking, "Repent, be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ." And that day 3,000 people believe. Just like that. From a locked room to a movement. From fear to flame. Quirky historical detail. Baptisms back then weren't quiet ceremonies with soft piano music. They were public, messy, immediate. Picture people lining up at Mikveh's Jewish ritual, Bathsor, the nearest stream, stripping off outer garments, stepping down into the water, and coming up soaked and smiling. A rebirth in full view. You step back, stunned. The city is still Jerusalem, but the world has turned. A man who should have been forgotten after his execution has just ignited a wildfire that no empire can contain. And somewhere in the swirl of dust and language and water, a new body is forming. The church, not a building, not a religion, a people, and they've just been set on fire. The city never sleeps now, not because it's louder, but because it's changing. In alleys and courtyards, behind locked doors and open tables, people are gathering. They whisper the name of Jesus, not with fear anymore, but with wonder, with joy, and something else you haven't seen in them before, power. You walk through Jerusalem and pass homes where laughter spills out like oil. Children play. Old men argue over scripture with new eyes. Women bake bread for twice as many as they used to. People are selling their land, giving away their savings, and no one's pressuring them. They just want to. Why? Because of a resurrected man. One they saw, one they touched. One who ate fish in front of them and said, "Now you go." And they did. You slip back into the upper room. It's different now, less hiding, more planning. The apostles teach all day. People line up to be baptized, to hear more, to share stories of what they've seen. Someone just came back from Bethany saying a man was healed after being prayed over. Another says Peter's shadow passed over a beggar, and the man stood up. You're not sure what to believe, but this much is clear. Something's moving, still, Not everyone's thrilled. You pass the temple courts and see the high priests watching. From the shadows, they whisper about heresy, about control, and about one name in particular, Stephen, a young man, full of energy, a deacon, they say, appointed to serve food, but somehow ends up preaching, loudly, publicly, with a fire in his voice that sounds like thunder even when he's gentle. He speaks in synagogues, debates scholars, and wins. It's infuriating for them, and dangerous for him. One afternoon, the news spreads fast. Stephen's been arrested. You follow the crowds out beyond the city wall. A group of elders surrounds him. They accuse him of blasphemy, twisting his words. But he doesn't tremble. He just looks upward, and then he says it. I see heaven open, and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God. It's too much. The crowd roars, and they drag him to the ground, stone by stone. They kill him. You can't look away. You hear his final words through blood and dust. Lord, do not hold this sin against them. And then dash stillness. Your heart pounds. You think, this is where it all falls apart. But it doesn't. It ignites again. The followers scatter, but they don't stop. They go to Samaria, to Joppa, to Damascus. And further, they carry nothing but the message, and it spreads like fire across dry fields. Fact check. Most scholars agree that the persecution of early Christians began with Stephen's death. It didn't stamp the movement out. It scattered, it tanned with it, the message. One of history's strangest ironies. The more they tried to crush it, the faster it grew. Quirky footnote. One of the men guarding the coats during Stephen's execution was named Saul. He stood silently, arms crossed, unmoved. But you'll hear more about him soon. Back in the city, the tension grows. Roman officials look annoyed, not threatened. Yet, the temple leadership is furious, and the disciples, they're alive with something you don't have words for yet. Not happiness, not even hope. Something deeper, like they've been touched by lightning, and now carry a current wherever they go. And it all comes back to one impossible moment. A man, dead on a cross, and then walking through walls, breaking bread, breathing peace, and promising, this is just the beginning. You're outside the city again, walking a dusty path that snakes through rolling hills and olive groves. The sky above is clean and clear, the kind of endless blue that seems impossible after everything you've seen. But your thoughts are with a man behind you, one who, until now, stood against everything you've come to believe. Saul, remember him, stood there when Stephen was killed, held the cloaks, said nothing, but make no mistake, he wasn't neutral. He was furious, a scholar, a zealot, determined to crush this new movement before it grew teeth. He didn't just disapprove of Jesus' followers, he hunted them, and he was good at it. You heard stories, house raids, men and women dragged off in chains, public beatings, synagogue showdowns, until the road to Damascus. That's where it happened. You weren't there. No one really was except Saul, but you've heard him tell the story, not just once over and over, to anyone who would listen. And every time he says it the same way. I saw a light, brighter than the sun, and I fell to the ground. And I heard a voice say, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? He asked, Who are you, Lord? And the answer, I am Jesus. That was it. That was the moment the church's greatest enemy became its greatest witness. Historical note. Saul of Tarsus, later called Paul, becomes one of the most prolific and influential figures in early Christianity. His letters would eventually make up nearly half of the New Testament. But it all starts here, not with education, not with ambition, but with an encounter he didn't plan for and couldn't explain. After Damascus, Saul disappeared for a while. Some say he went into Arabia. Some say he spent years unlearning everything. He thought he knew about God. But when he came back, he preached Jesus like a man who owed him his life, which, to be fair, he did. You saw it firsthand, how he walked into synagogues full of people who used to support him, and told them the man they killed was alive. How he stood in front of councils who used to praise him and said he had been wrong. How he got beaten, stoned, jailed, and still refused to shut up. Quirky tidbit. There's a story from one of his travels where Paul preached so long, a young man fell asleep, tumbled out a window, and died. Paul calmly walked down, raised the kid from the dead, and then, get this, kept preaching till sunrise. You've got to admire the stamina. But this isn't about Paul's stamina. It's about his certainty. He wasn't preaching ideas. He was announcing a person, someone who met him in light, someone who flipped his life upside down and turned him from a terror into a torch. And it wasn't just him. There were others. James, the brother of Jesus, who once called him crazy, now leads the Jerusalem church. Philip baptizes a foreign official from Ethiopia who goes home and starts something new. Peter, the one who denied, now walks the streets with fire in his bones, healing the sick and boldly facing the same council that once terrified him. You're seeing something that shouldn't exist, a movement with no army, no wealth, no political power, spreading across cities and cultures like wildfire, from Judea to Samaria to Rome itself, because of resurrection. Not just a belief in life after death, but in a person who walked out of the grave. And here's the thing no one expected. They don't just say he rose, they say you will too. That death is not the end, that bodies can break but not defeat, that what happened to Jesus was just the first. Fact check. This belief that resurrection wasn't a one-time miracle but the start of something bigger became central to early Christian teaching. Not floating spirits, not vague afterlife dreams, but actual renewed life, a new heaven, a new earth, a new body, and you're caught in it, a witness, a listener, a traveler walking beside history as it unfolds. And still, this isn't the end. Not even close. It's been years now, but the story hasn't slowed, it's multiplied. What started with fishermen and tax collectors now surges through cities and ports and desert roads. You stand on a windswept cliff near the coast, gazing toward the sea, where ships carry the name of Jesus further and further, and yet, even here on the edge of the empire, still feel the echo of Golgotha. The cross, the empty tomb, the upper room. They aren't memories, they're movements. The man you followed, through streets and shadows. He's not a tale to be told. He's a fire still spreading. You've watched it unfold. Peter, once the coward, now the cornerstone of the Jerusalem church. You remember when he stood up during Pentecost, like thunder in human skin, and now he preaches in hostile towns, heals beggars, and gets arrested more often than most people get groceries. You watched him raise Tabitha from the dead with a prayer and tears. John, the quiet one, now writes and teaches and carries Mary, mother of Jesus, into her old age with honor. The boy who leaned on Jesus at dinner has become a father to many. And then Paul, the former hunter of Christians, now chased for preaching Christ. He's been beaten, shipwrecked, stoned, imprisoned. Once he even escaped by being lowered in a basket through a city wall. Like a sack of grain with apostolic urgency, you heard him debate philosophers in Athens. You watched him write, by candlelight in a Philippian jail. You listened when he declared, "If Christ has not been raised, our faith is worthless." And he meant it, because this was never about morals or community or clever sermons. It was always about a person who rose from the dead, and everything else flows from that. Fact check. Christianity didn't grow through conquest or celebrity or comfort. It spread through witness, through lives so changed that even enemies of the movement couldn't explain them. Many modern historians admit something happened, something explosive enough to cause thousands of Jews devoted to one God and one law to start claiming that Jesus, a crucified carpenter, was now enthroned beside Yahweh himself. But even after all this, the world didn't change all at once. Empires still crush. Injustice still reigns. Rome doesn't give up power politely. You've stood outside prison cells where apostles prayed in chains. You've seen believers feed the poor, bury the dead, and gather quietly in caves to break bread and whisper, "Come, Lord." You've seen some die, martyrs, ordinary men and women who sang as flames licked their robes, who forgave their executioners, who called out Jesus is Lord, while Caesar's name was chiseled into every monument around them. Quirky tidbit: early Christians were often mocked in graffiti. One ancient Roman carving shows a man worshipping a crucified figure with a donkey's head. Below it, the caption, "Alexamenos worships his God." Even then, people couldn't fathom worshipping someone crucified, but followers of Jesus, they wore it as a badge of honor, because the cross wasn't defeat, it was victory in disguise. You remember Jesus' words before he left, "You will be my witnesses to the ends of the earth." You're watching it happen through storms and scars, through whispers and wonders, through fishermen and tax collectors, women and widows, zealots and skeptics. Even you're part of it. You've heard every word, seen every step, felt the ground shake beneath your sandals. And now, the story isn't over, because he said he'd return. He said death wouldn't win. He said the kingdom would come not just in hearts, but in full new heaven, new earth, new life. And when that day comes, the tomb won't just be empty, the graves will be, and the man who wore thorns will wear a crown forever. And now the fire dims, the room is quiet. You feel your heartbeat slow, your breath settle. The journey we've taken through dusty streets, garden shadows, courtroom whispers, and stone tombs has stretched across time. You've walked with fishermen, stood beneath a darkened sky, listened to the crack of a hammer on wood. You've watched doubt fall away, one moment at a time. Let that settle. Let the echoes fade. Let the silence return, because the story of the crucifixion wasn't about an ending, it was about a beginning. A still, trembling spark that lit hearts and lit cities and now flickers gently inside you. You may never walk the roads of ancient Jerusalem with your feet. You may never stand on Galilee's shore or hear Hebrew in the marketplace. But tonight, in your quiet room, in the soft dark, you did walk there, you did witness it, you did listen. And now, the world can rest a little easier, because the story has been told. Again, not from a pulpit, not in stained glass, but like a whisper, just between us. So let the light stay low, let the hush linger a little longer. And as your eyes grow heavy, remember, the cross was not the final note. It was the turning of a page. 1. The world is still reading. Even now, sleep well, traveler. You've seen something holy.